Imagine yourself fighting for your life on a day-to-day basis. Taxes grow higher, your sister is starving, and worst of all, you get conscripted. That's how Marfusha Sentinel Girls start, or at least the preload introduction of it. The game is made by a sole Japanese developer on the Unity engine, and unlike the other indie Japanese game made by a sole developer, this one is much more grounded in its content as well as goals, with Sentinel Girls being an incredibly simple and straightforward game, without the side plot of you becoming an elder god by the end of the game. But then again, I feel like it's more of a genre difference more than anything else. The gameplay loop of the title is quite simple. You control this cutie patootie and prevent evil robots from breaching the city walls, which in concept is pretty similar to the Last Stand games. However, unlike Last Stand games, this game has been inspired by Gunslinger Girl and Girls Frontline, so I think you know where this one is going. The goal is to survive for 100 days, and after that, depending on a variety of choices and how well you've played, you get one of 9 endings. Not counting the one where you suck and get thrown into a jail to contemplate over your existence. The waves are overall fast, usually having a handful of robots to kill. After the end of each day, instead of seeing the literal sea of more and more ridiculous taxes, you get an option to buy an upgrade from a pool of improvements, including weapons such as the assault rifle, shotgun or a machine gun. That upgrade should improve your damage, firing speed, co-workers who help you in defending the gates, and finally consumables, which I feel like only the barricades are worth it because unlike the vast majority of them, they don't get wiped from his mortal coil once a single day passes. As for the weapons, we get a good selection of weapon types, ranging from good, alright, to oh my fucking god, why did I buy this piece of trash again? All of those have their advanced variants, which offer more firepower in exchange for being more expensive in comparison to their conventional counterparts. Each weapon has its own durability, which after 8 days or so expires, and Marfusha is forced to once again rely on her sidearm, which in later stages is a fate worse than death. And what would have been a good tower defense game without some good enemies? We got small enemies, explosive enemies, big enemies, enemies that create a force shield, enemies that hop, enemies that chop, and enemies that are bullet sponges. Story-wise it's quite simple. Marfusha is working as a bakery girl and is being conscripted into the National Force of Kaznoria as a low-ranking city guard and slowly sees the city's fall to the enemy force. Eventually, she's forced to make her final stand at her dome room, fighting a really big thin skin. After that, the game gives you one of aforementioned 9 endings where everybody dies in a pretty heartbreaking way. As for the cast, we have Bielka the tsundere, Laika the stoic supervisor, and was the only character in the series to wear pants, also an airhead, Viniset the lazy girl, Albina the cheerful girl, Bion the girl failure, and finally Strelka the bookworm. Her ending is perhaps the most interesting, as she reveals to us that the enemy nation uses brains of captured soldiers to power the robot army, and considering that in the other endings, Marfusha or her companions get captured for quote-unquote parts, yeah. You can see this concept in Laika's ending, where one of the robots, presumably Bion, is apologizing to Marfusha. Now, as for the quote-unquote good ending, Marfusha is rescued by the government and is inducted into the elite squad under the direct command of the supreme leader. All of her co-workers have presumably died, and she lost an eye, but hey, at least she's reunited with Snezhinka, so it's not all bad. That being said, co-workers don't really get a lot of development outside of the introduction scene, where they're going outside of their archetypes, as the introduction scenes are mostly about, oh, look at this character doing something quirky in the dorm, and it's a big shame, as they only really start getting going at the very end of the story, during their respective epilogues. I would love to see some sort of a character arc of Bion becoming more capable, or I don't know, Enos giving a lore reason why everybody but her is wearing skirts. There's also the Endless mode, where instead of playing as Marfusha, you can also play as her co-workers, each having some sort of a unique stat to differentiate one from another, and as much as the prospect of playing the game without paying taxes is tempting, I mostly passed it, honestly. In conclusion, Marfusha Sentinel Girls is a good game for an incredibly low price of €6 or $8 if you live in the land of the funny orange man. While I was a little bit harsh on the game, it's not coming from malice, rather from the knowledge that the creator has improved their craft in the second game, which we will cover right now. Snezhinka Sentinel Girls is one of those sequels where instead of reinventing the wheel, the creator decided to improve the idea as much as they can, ending up with a product that is much smoother, nicer, and overall much more pleasant to play. First thing that catches the eye in comparison to the original game is that the characters that we play as move across the map much faster compared to the sluggish Marfusha and her companions. Second difference is that unlike in the first game, you actually have to aim down sights, otherwise your bullets are gonna go all over the place. ADS makes you move a little bit slower, but personally, I like the change as it gives the game a little bit of a decision making. Do you go slow and accurate or fast and not being able to hit a broadside of a barn? There's a lot of diversity in the upgrades now. While the stat upgrades are still here, slightly different as bullet speed and bullet concentration got taken out in favor of knockback and cooldown reduction, there are much more spicy ones, encouraging variety in builds that would have been completely unthinkable in the first game. Consumables were also reworked to do hell and back. Now the consumables are divided into 3 categories. Yellow, consisting of flying drones that follow us and fire at triggers. Blue, widest one, which has mostly rechargeable items like the multi-missile, AP runs on hand grenades. And finally the green ones, which consists mostly of the turrets, which are one time only, true, but just like the barricades, they stay for as long as you keep them alive. Guns have received much more love as well. Now rather than having just one type of firearm, there are typically 2 or 3 variants within each class. For example, the advanced sniper rifle category has one that operates like an upgrade to the normal sniper rifle, but there's also the alternative, which is actually an anti-material rifle, gaining an absurd 350 damage and penetrating enemies on top of that, making it one of the most ridiculous weapons in the game. I also like the attention to detail. Previously, the magazines would disappear into a Garfa, but now they are dropped on the ground, just like nature intended. Co-workers stayed relatively the same, but with one significant improvement. Thanks to an upgrade, you can make them follow you, which makes every single one of them incredibly useful not just for defense, but also for tackling enemies that could be a little bit further away from the gate. Again, we have 7 of them, but this time around they are much better written. We have Anita the Signaler, an anxiety-filled girl with ambition to become a radio host, Hector the rich bitch who only came here because a common soldier saved her life, therefore she needs to prove that she's superior, Kravaska the pillow girl who's also a former scientist, Toshka our boss and a part-time artist, Deshik the pushover, Abrek the former teacher who landed here after one of her students tried to blow up the school and she covered for her, sacrificing her dream job, and finally Sentinel the sniper, who in reality is just Francis from Left 4 Dead, reincarnated as an aura farming anime girl. Now as for the plot, the game follows the quote-unquote good ending of the original game. Marfusha has been inducted into Molten Iron Squad, and she turned out to be the best soldier of Kazmoria. The problem is that she's incredibly self-destructive. Every single time she comes back to Snezhinka, she's covered in more and more wounds until one day, she never comes back. Upon hearing that the army refuses to answer her questions, Sentinel takes matters into her own bakery girl hands and tries to take her sister back home, signing up with the PMC Blue Peacock. Indeed, in this universe, the demand for the PMCs has skyrocketed.
Like the good old days after 9/11!
Anyway, the gameplay loop remains mostly the same. Predict the... whatever the fuck this is, and after 30 days, if you are good enough, you get an option to travel to either North City, where Marfusha is stationed, or the East City, which Marfusha was defending in the first game. And this choice is very important as it will decide on the ending of the game. If you go to the East City, Sentinel Blue Peacock Firstborn train towards it, followed by escorting a tank through the fields and outskirts surrounding the city, and finally find themselves in the city center. However, there is something wrong. As it turns out, the mercenaries were sent here to crush rebellion, not the enemy nation. After that revelation, Sentinel and her partner of a choice make their final stand in the same door her sister did years ago, also ending with killing a very big clanker. Endings here are just as depressing as the first game, usually ending in Sentinel getting captured by the enemy, but as a result of characters being much better written, they hit especially hard, and I would like to highlight 3 of them. Anita's, Hector's, and Abrek's. Anita loses her voice in the midst of the dorm siege, so she can't warn Sentinel about the fate of the POWs. After Anita recovers in the enemy hospital, she has to live with the guilt that her friend is now powering some clankers. Hector generally has a character arc, which is pretty generic but nice nevertheless. She goes from being an asshole to somewhat respecting Sentinel in the end. As the two get overrun in the ending, Hector conducts the plan to use the scavenged components from the final boss to drive the enemy soldiers. As it is revealed by Hector, those are electrothermal filaments, which are those things that power every single advanced gun, and are in the design of every single character across both games actually. The guys that were bribed shortly after die via exposure to them, and the two make their escape, constantly being pursued by the rebels, until they just can't resist. The main takeaway from this ending is that every single character in the series has a ticking time bomb on their coral belt, just waiting to kill them. Abrek blew herself up, allowing Sentinel to escape, but as it turns out it wasn't vain as Marfusha was killed in action. Sentinel later on is found by the National Army, and they simply repeat the cycle, turning her into a hero in lieu of her sister. Funny enough, that was predicted by the rebels when they tried to talk down Snezhinka before the dorm siege. As for the North City, first we are deployed near the city gates, until it turns out that some of the infiltrated started to destroy the power plants within the city. So we are moved over there and get introduced to a pretty cool gameplay element, namely the containers, which outside of being pretty good barricades against the bots, they also drop credits or upgrades upon destruction, which is fairly creative. I've never seen that one before, honestly. After 90 days of defending, it turns out that our PMC have been in some shady deals with the enemy country, so at robot point, we are forced to join the resistance. After all, they can end all this madness and also promise to Snezhinka that they will get her to their sister. Yeah. The final 10 days with the resistance are more like a victory lap, where alongside the clankers we are engaging the Kazmorian units. The whole thing involves a couple of cool encounters, like the APC or the tank that we are protecting in the eastern city path. On day 100, we find Marfusha, and after a bit of back and forth, she and Snezhinka have a fight. In the end, Snezhinka overpowers Marfusha, and it turns out that Marfusha wasn't really fighting for her country. She was fighting for the memory of her friends from the first game, so they won't die in vain. She refuses to go with Snezhinka, leaving her with no choice. There are two epilogues for this ending. One where Doshka, now part of the resistance, reveals that ever since shooting her sister, Snezhinka has been in a vegetative state, muttering to herself in daze, denying what she had done. The second one is actually a little bit hopeful. Marfusha wakes up in a hospital with yet another gunshot wound, surrounded by her comrades. Because as it turns out, Albina, Felicite, Laika and Strelka all survived the events of the first game. They explain how the nation descended into civil war when she was recovering, and how they did not get turned into an AI because of, human rights? Really? Yeah, I'm not buying that honestly. You could take a guess that because of pressure that Marfusha and Molten Iron Squadron were putting on the enemy nation, Kazmorian troops are able to liberate them from wherever they were held, but honestly it's pretty much speculation. This scene could be just as well a hallucination of Marfusha dying in hospital for all that we know. And so, that was the second Sentinel Girls game, and just from how much I gushed about it, you can probably guess why this game has 98% positive review score. It's honestly quite incredible considering how cheap both the games are. And if I had to rate it, I would give it 4 breads out of 5 electrothermal filaments.